Hello and welcome to Shite Talk, an Irish history podcast. It's been a while since we've done a hello because you've been doing the intros and you just have noticed sometimes just not doing them. You just launch straight into the episode.
Yeah.
Without plugging any of the live dates or the Patreon, which we could do right. Hey everyone, we want to keep the intro real short. We've got live dates coming up all over the country. Go buy tickets. There's a Patreon that has all loads of extra content and episodes and just supporting us. So support us now when you can. Don't be ruined the day.
Yeah. Get in while the going's good. You get loads of episodes for a $5, including all of the upcoming tribunal scandals.
Mm-hmm. And I've got one about an MP who thinks that his penis was a teapot.
I mean, that worth the price of admission alone. Yeah, I'd say
that's going to be good.
Yeah, and we got live shows, and there'll be a link in this episode, and it'll have all the live gigs we've got coming up.
But also, right now we've got Bertie Part 2. Part
2 of 4 or 5, I can't remember. But this is his first term in government, the age of tribunals. This is in keeping with our style. I've written one paragraph properly to open up the episode. Mm-hmm. It's 1997. American animated sitcom The Simpsons first airs on Irish television on the now defunct Network 2.
Whoa.
Dodi Fayed is planning a romantic getaway for two in Paris. And Bertie Ahern has just become the leader of Ireland.
There you go.
Yeah, but in the first couple of weeks, Princess Diana dies. And I was looking at like what songs were in the charts. The month before she died, Time to Say Goodbye by Andrea Bocelli. It was like in the charts.
Fast Car, Tracy Chapman.
I'll Be Missing You by Puff Daddy. Also, 2 number 1 hits the month before she dies. That must have made it a lot easier. Tough pill to swallow, but luckily you've got 2 sad bangers. Mbop, also in the charts. By Hanson.
They're still together.
Are they?
Still making music. Because they're brothers who just never fell out. They just only had that one song. But they're still just touring, just doing gigs, making a living.
What do you mean brothers? What about the woman?
Yeah, there's 3 sisters.
Yeah, 3 sisters from that. What are you talking about? So, where we leave off last time? Bertie has just gotten into power. His first time as Taoiseach. John Bruton, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Just died last week.
People liked him. People don't like Joan Bruton.
Sure. Yeah, I forgot about her. To be honest, I don't really have much of an opinion about John, and this is already, if I'm invested in one man, I'm not going to start reading about him.
Yeah, I didn't want to rock the apple cart at all, but when it came out, everyone
rock
was
the apple cart is a pure Bertie line.
Control F it there, see if it's in.
It genuinely is in the script. He said, "Don't upset the apple tart."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh right. God, I love wrong turns of phrases that can kind of still make sense.
Sure. But the Bruton government, they'd done a fine job, but it was boring. People weren't feeling the money in their pocket.
I can tell by your face.
What?
You're like, they had a load of money, everything was fine, everything was good.
Yeah.
How about box office?
How about Bertie, The Simpsons, 9/11, Princess Diana? It's time for things to get interesting, all right? So Bertie makes a coalition government with 4 independent TDs and the Progressive Democrats, who are led by Mary Harney, who becomes Taoiseach. So they only had 4 seats.
Is that a rainbow coalition then?
No, the Rainbow Coalition was Bruton's government.
What is a rainbow? Just a
load of different...
But every coalition's a load of different...
That is true. But this is a major
Is it
minority.
3 parties? Because usually it's like
parties.
2 parties with independents.
Yeah.
Just making sure.
No, you're right. That's a good question. But this is...
Because I do like how when the Rainbow Coalition came out, everyone was just trying to one-up each other with the best pun. That they're like, the weather's not great now, but next week... with a little bit of rain. After the rain comes a sunshine. When comes the sunshine, there's a rainbow.
Yeah, none of those are good.
None of them are good, and everyone just keeps trying to.
Yeah, it was a great time. So they've got not a rainbow government, but a coalition of the PDs who only have 4 seats. They didn't do very well in the last election. They only have 4 seats, and there's 4 independents. But between the 4 PDs and Charlie McCreevy as finance minister, they have a crazy amount of power. And this is going back to the first episode of like Bertie, he's just there for the crack. He doesn't really have any vision for the country. He just wants to be in charge. And now he is in charge. It's time for the PDs want low tax, even lower tax, and then no tax.
I like all of this.
Yeah, get rid of the tax. Don't tax anything. Cut public spending. That's what they want. So it's sort of between them and McCreevy, that's what dictates the next couple of years of finance. And then the independent TDs just get whatever they want. Mm-hmm. So
what do they want?
They want it all. It
Class.
seems. Yeah. the Healy Rays want to set up a dynasty in Kerry and build an international airport. I think one of the things they did ask for is an extension to the tourism season, which does sound like they just wanted it to be sunnier for longer.
What does that mean?
I don't know. That was one of the requirements. I guess the tourism season, there's different rules about. I don't know.
Can we start? September is the summer now.
Yeah, that's why April is in the summertime in Kerry. But there's also Mike Lowry, who we'll talk about.
But no, hold on. That it doesn't make any sense.
No, it doesn't. But that's the time we're living in.
It's a year-round tourism.
Yeah, it is now.
Tourist season is like, we're very busy in October and November with some tourism.
Yeah.
What's going on?
I get is there different rules for hotels and pints and VAT in tourist season?
Maybe.
I don't know. Anyway, the Healy Rays wanted the summers to be longer, and by God, they got it. That's the sort of time we're living in. He assembles his cabinet. He's got Brian Cowan as Minister for Health and Children, Micheál Martin as Minister for Education, De Valera's still alive daughter, Celia, Minister for the Heritage and Arts and the Gaeltacht, and one Ray Burke as Minister for Foreign Affairs. So he'll come up a good bit later on. But in the last episode we were talking about, back in February of 1997, Bruton, RIP, had set up the McCracken Tribunal to look into allegations about businessmen bribing politicians, namely one Charlie Haughey and Mike Lowry. So that comes out in the first couple of weeks after the new election. They make a 100-page report that states that Haughey given untrue evidence under oath and that TD Michael Lowry was colluding with Ben Dunn in evading tax. So
Bad boys.
True. Well, Lowry, this I couldn't really figure out. Lowry had been Fine Gael Minister for Transport, and they'd stepped down in 1996 due to like all these allegations of being a con man, basically. And then he went on to top the polls as an independent in 1997 and helped form this new government, even with all of this going on. No. And he has topped the poll in Tipperary every election since. He's still going. And he's not only is he going, his sons are running as politicians, and they come second only after him.
What about Matty McGrath?
Yeah, it's him and McGrath. I think Larry's tip north and McGrath might be tip south. They're two of the biggest cowboys going. So we'll talk much. Mike Lowry's story is going to be covered in the Tribunal episodes, but this man is unstoppable. So he gets kicked out of it. Well, he sort of, he leaves, gets kicked out, steps down, immediately back in as an independent, back in government when Fine Gael gets kicked out. Under investigation. That's not going to stop Lowry. But we'll cover that more. Anyway, so I did have a bit of... I know in the last episode we were kind of making fun of the idea of $1 million blowing people's minds at this time. I found a rich list from 1997 of the top 20 richest people in the country. 4 of them were Ben Dunn's kids. 4 of the top 20 separately were Ben Dunn or Ben Dunn related.
Whoa.
And then there's also, and 2 of them were US citizens who'd moved to Ireland to escape tax. And then there was U2 and...
Who actually had moved abroad to escape tax.
Abroad to escape tax shortly there afterwards. But it was just funny looking through that. And then there's the Guinness family and Tony O'Reilly of Independent Media, he will show up a lot in the Tribunal episodes. But anyway, that's just to show how rich Dunn was at the time. And he got there by bribing politicians.
Whoa.
R.I.P. Another great man. So after the McCracken comes out, after the McCracken report comes out, the Ahern government sets up a new tribunal to investigate financial affairs and possible tax evasions of the 2 politicians, and this is known as the Moriarty Tribunal.
What do you think the pun game was like at the time for the Kraken? Like, release the Kraken.
Release the Kraken. I'm sure the newspapers are having a good time, but this is the Moriarty Tribunal, and it's set up to investigate specifically Lowry and Haughey. So from August... So I realised when I wrote this out, this is covering his first term from 1997 to 2002. A lot of these stories are from the first 6 months. That's when all the interesting stuff happened. But from August onwards, so within a couple of weeks, there's all these allegations coming up again that the new Minister for Foreign Affairs might be a wrong'un. There's all these stories that he may have taken bribes from property developers while he was in Dublin County Council. And he addresses these. He goes up into the Dáil and he says, "I have bared my soul to the House today, and I find that particular question offensive in the extreme. I have no overseas bank account." That would later turn out to be a lie.
How much later?
Oh, like he steps down in about 2 weeks after this.
Okay,
but,
that's always the best. You don't want to, like, 2 years down the line.
Oh, no, it's almost, well, yeah, so he went on.
Have you disclosed all your houses? Yes. Well, what about this one? Okay, I forgot to do that one.
I need to step away to be with my family.
Have you disclosed not disclosed any more houses? No, that's it. Well, what about this one? Well, now, come on. We're going to start playing that game.
This is starting to sound like a witch hunt.
I think that was my favourite news story of last year. That TD that they just kept pulling him up for other houses that he just hadn't disclosed. You're like, you have to leave now.
Sure, but then we'll see.
But there's just something about getting caught in a lie and doubling down. It was like when Stephen Ireland lied about his
grandmother was. Yeah. But, well, we'll see in the tribunal episodes. Bertie, there's also a lot to be said. Like, don't tell them anything. What are you going to give them ammunition?
Lie for long. Like, lie longer. Just keep doing it, because telling the truth it's not going to work.
Who's that going to help? The public. Fuck that. So Burke went on to say, I am taking the opportunity to state unequivocally that I have done nothing illegal, unethical, or improper. Also wrong. Indeed, I find myself the victim of a campaign of calamity and abuse. I wish to make it clear that if any further untruths are published about me, I will take all necessary steps to vindicate my good name and reputation. This is all weeks before. Like, he is one of the few politicians who goes to jail. He's like, this man ends up in prison shortly after this. But so Bertie,
how do you get an Irish politician goes to jail?
I know. I've had notes on Ray Burke for ages because I always found that fascinating. He's one of the few from this period who actually does prison time for being corrupt. That's how corrupt he is. But so Bertie, this is right. So this is all around September, August. Bertie goes into the Dáil and says, in the case of Ray Burke, I see a much more sinister development. The persisting hounding of an honourable man to resign his important position on the basis of innuendo and unproven allegations. I've been just about up every tree in North County Dublin, chasing all kinds of things, and I never found anything. That's a famous phrase of his that shows up a lot, where he says, because there's all these allegations about Burke, and we'll talk about one of them in a second. But there's like lots of rumors about him, bribery, corruption, all this sort of stuff. And he famously says that when he was going to appoint him as Minister of Foreign Affairs, which is like that's one of the biggest positions. And he famously says that he looked into him, he looked up every tree in Dublin trying to find anything on him, and there was nothing to be found. And looked up every tree as a phrase that gets thrown back at Bertie a lot. In the research in this, the amount of times people have been like, because also, again, Burke goes to prison shortly afterwards, and everyone was like, well, I guess the evidence wasn't up the tree. Yeah, but it turns out he was extremely corrupt.
You shouldn't have been checking the trees. You should have been checking these files called classified.
Yeah. But also such a weird turn of phrase to be like, I've been looking up every tree, and it turns he's an innocent man, an honourable man. Oh yeah, it turns out that in 1990, there was a little case of Ray Burke and the Saudi Arabian prince. So this had happened in December of 1990.
A real prince or like an email prince?
All sorts. So
the Irish economy, if you can, I'm a bit hard up for my money right now. If you can spot me like 50 million, we can get you maybe like $1 billion in about 5 years.
That is almost exactly what happens. So what happens is they get approached by a group of 11 individuals, 8 Saudi Arabian citizens and 3 Pakistani citizens, 6 adults, 5 kids, to get passports for money, which is apparently something that we used to do. Mm-hmm. That isn't illegal, apparently, but there's all these sort of irregularities as to how it's done. So they approach them to get passports. The next day, the passports are hand-delivered to the Saudis, potentially by Charlie High. It doesn't specifically say who it is, but it seems like it was High that hand-delivered them, which is very irregular. And he gave them to Sheikh Khalid bin Mahfouz, the owner of Saudi Arabia's only private bank. The passports are handed over in return for a promised £100 million sterling. So you were half right earlier when you said, the economy's not good in 1990, and here comes some nice fellows from the Middle East who are like, we love European passports, and here's £100 million.
British pounds. A
strong currency. So, this all happens in 1990. Burke's successor in Minister for Justice is called...
Sorry, this is just one of those ones where you just can't justify... It's like when we said in the last episode of like, you're judging me by the laws of 10 years ago. You're like, just morally, you're like, what is it? It's a passport for lads who don't have passports, who are not from this country.
But the £100 million.
And it's £100 million. Right?
Yeah.
The fact that they're offering you that.
Yeah. But it seems to be legal. It's not even, that sounds
I don't know if it's
dodgy.
legal. It's probably just not illegal.
It's not illegal. But so Burke leaves Minister for Justice. He's replaced by Mary Gogan Quinn. And she starts looking into this whole deal. It's like, there's an awful lot of irregularities here. Stuff like the passports are issued the day, so he signs them in as naturalized citizens. The passports are issued the day before the signatures are signed. Now, I myself have gone through some issues with visas, and this has been basically none of this makes sense. They're not asked to swear fealty to the state. They're not asked to pay fees for the thing, which seems insane considering they're throwing around 100 million and they're not going to pay the £20 or whatever it is to get a passport. But all these things, like, it seems very rushed through. It's also very unusual.
How do you think they got the 100 million?
Well,
it wasn't by giving it away.
You don't give it away, yeah, exactly. So it's very unusual for the head, for the act, like, he's minister for the state. He signs the documents himself, which is unusual. Also very unusual for the sitting Taoiseach to hand deliver the documents. So it's all very weird. Everything's rushed through. But there's an inquiry into it in the 90s, which she puts together because it's so suspicious. That's shown to Bertie, which is what he's talking about when he says he's looking up trees. I looked into the Saudi passport thing. It turns out all fine. But the passports get issued. The day the passports get issued, there's a letter to the department signed by Sheikh Mahfouz confirming the availability of 20 million sterling for the passports. Now, for people keeping tally at home, that's a good 80 million less than what was promised.
But, I mean, now next week they'll probably come with the next 20 million. And that's just how, you don't know how big finance works, Kevin.
I know that Mr. Haughey walked to the Shelburne Hotel to hand over a load of passports for 100 million. And the next day the government got a cheque for 20 million.
But sure, the cost of the city, Kevin. Oh, you're walking down Stephen's Green. You want a sandwich, right?
Yeah, you hop in a taxi. You know,
another 20.
Price of coffee these days, sure. And then I bought a round for the boys, and then Ray Burke needed his cut, and then sure, what was left?
But you'd be lucky to have 78 million.
Yeah. Now the Sheikh had promised the Sheikh group.
How well dressed was he?
He's very fashion. He had promised £100 million sterling, which is roughly half of what he'd given to a young man called Osama bin Laden the year before. But now he said that was only when the CIA was there.
How could you not trust a man who had lad in his name?
Yeah.
To be honest,
the lads?
Most of the conversation was just me going, lad.
Is Osama been laden with money? In retrospect, I shouldn't have funneled all that cash to Al Qaeda. So, well, in a report from the President of the Security Council of the United Nations in December of 2002, a year after that horrible tragedy, Khalid was listed as one of 7 main individual Saudi sponsors of Al Qaeda. His Wikipedia page is very fun because it's just accusations of relations to bin Laden, accusations of funneling money into Al Qaeda, accusations of corruption in his bank, and then in the middle of it, it's like in 1990 he bought Irish passports from. It's great to be mentioned up there, sandwiched in between investigations by the CIA for funneling money into one of the biggest terrorist organizations in the Middle East. But anyway, these are the rumors that are circulating around R.A. Burke.
The Americans must hate us.
It's insane that we are there's a debate as to whether the president should go or whether the Taoiseach should go visit the president now in March over Israel Palestine. It is wild that we're allowed anywhere near the White House.
Yeah.
It's we'll talk about this in a couple of minutes, but like, part of the big relationship we have with American presidents is that we made them come over here to help us sort out the civil war we're having in the north with all that terrorism we couldn't stop doing. But anyway, so this passport thing resurfaces again. So he's put in as minister in probably August 1997. All through August and September, there's all these rumors of corruption in the planning proposal stuff. Then, completely separate to all of that, this story about the passports resurfaces again. Burke denies it, but on the 7th of October, he steps down. He resigns. Now, the Irish political podcast did a series about Bertie last summer. They claim that this article, it was an Irish Times article about the passports, it comes out. They claim it's like the last cut that forced him to resign. They also allude to the fact that the guy who wrote the article, Irish Times journalist Sean Flynn, lived 4 doors down from a one Bertie Ahern. So there's pressure from the Taoiseach Mary Hardy to get rid of Burke. He looks bad. He's all these allegations about money, but Burke's old-style haughty politician. So Bertie can't stab him in the back. But, coincidentally, his neighbour suddenly writes a big hit piece about him, bringing up some news from 10 years ago.
People live places. Kevin.
People live places.
Dublin is a village. I don't know if you know this. Dublin's a village.
Now,
unless you're not from Dublin.
Yeah.
And the likelihood is you live in a village. Because you have an understanding of what a village actually is. And Dublin people can just fucking stop saying that.
Sure, but now they, in the podcast, I mean, obviously they're going to like big up the importance of their own journalists and articles and stuff like that, but they certainly allude to the fact that he might have said something to, because he couldn't be seen to publicly get rid of Burke, but he very much did get rid of him, which is a classic Bertie maneuver. So the progressive,
but he just is there any smoking gun? Does he write anything positive about Bertie that you're like, well, come on now? Like, if does he reference Bertie? He's like, Bertie always puts his bins out on time, Ahern.
No, he doesn't mention him or anything in the article. But it could be a coincidence.
Bertie gave my daughter 50 quid for a sponsored skydive, Ahern.
So there's pressure, because there's been pressure from Ahern to get rid of him. The PDs don't collapse the government. This is very much in contrast to last week's episode, where the government would collapse every time there was a strong breeze coming in from the east. They don't want to collapse the government because there's only 4 of them.
Just like a needy boyfriend or a girlfriend.
Yeah,
I'll leave if you want. Are you sure? I don't think I'm right for you. I can go with it. Just stay your time. No. This is better for you. I'm gone.
Like, it's
if you love someone, let them go.
Yeah. Whereas compared to that, so again, the PDs, there's only 4 of them. They did not have a good election. They are very lucky to be in the position that they're in, and they don't want to. If they collapse the government, it's not going to be good for them. So they don't say anything about High, don't say anything about Burke. They just let that all go in order to stay in power. But the allegations of like Burke and the rumours of corruption in the planning department in general lead to the setting up of the Tribunal of Inquiry into Certain Planning Matters and Payments, also known as the Flood Tribunal, and then later the Mahon Tribunal. So this is where it starts from. Investigations into Ray Burke and planning in general.
Did they call it Floodgate?
It's named after the judge who's in charge. So it becomes Flood after Judge Flood. Yeah. And then it's Judge Mahon at the end of it. Because it lasts for like a decade. So the McCracken one at the start lasts for 6 months, and everyone's like, love a good tribunal. In, out, 100-page report, 6 months, done. This one drags on for, it costs, we'll talk about that in the Mahon episode, but nothing happens at the end. They basically write up a report and they're like, yeah, they definitely did it. And we've now just spent a couple of $100 million investigating the fact that they did it, and the country's broke. So goodbye. But that's where that starts from. So these are the 3 big tribunals that kind of dog Bertie Ahern's life. There's the McCracken, that leads into the Moriarty, and then the Flood Mahon starts off with Ray Burke and planning permission, but that will eventually, that's the one that Bertie gets really dragged into. I don't know if we did a good example last week of explaining the concept of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, 2 different parties, essentially the same party, to a non-Irish audience. But
think Little Aldi.
That's very good, yeah. But if your family for generations would only shop at one, inexplicably.
And they hated the other.
They hated the other with a passion.
They couldn't stand it.
Yeah, and if you show them a picture of the inside of both of them, wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But this guy does a better job of explaining it. I'll play you a clip in a second. But when Ray Burke resigns, he's replaced as Minister for Foreign Affairs by Fianna Fáil Minister David Andrews. David Andrews from a big Nepo family. His dad, Todd Andrews, he was an IRA man in 1916. It's a good start. And in the Civil War. And the one-time head of RTE, where he got his relations David Andrews Jr., aka David McSavage, and Ryan Tubridy, jobs for life. So this is this connection. McSavage's dad was the Minister for Foreign Affairs in 97, and his granddad was in charge of RT for I think a year, but because of that, that's where we get Tubridy. So McSavage, famous Irish comedian, he put together more succinctly the concept of Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael.
How can your man run again? I thought he was a convicted criminal or something.
He fixed the road.
But sure, he robbed money.
What are you talking about? My father voted for his father, and you'll vote for his son. He fixed the road.
And that is
Exactly.
exactly. That's a better job of explaining Irish politics than we did in the last hour and a half. But it's pretty much.
My dad has always voted for obviously there's a local lad down in Coughlan anyway, but the justification for voting for him.
Yeah.
He was every time he's like, well, he bought a leather jacket off me in the 80s. And every time he comes up to canvass, he goes, the leather jacket.
Yeah.
And he just mentions that, and Dad's like, in fairness to him, he did give me money one time.
He's got me there. Yeah. It's very easy to buy Irish people's support for life.
Yeah. It's literally you fix a road, all right.
Yeah.
You put a sign up.
Yeah.
You put a mirror on a bad bend.
Yeah.
So people can see it.
The Healy Rays up in Dublin every other week, making some sort of mad embarrassment of Kerry. And they head back down to Kerry, fix some roads with the company that they own.
Do you think it's just embarrassing though that they're just sent up and they're like, we have to do it? It's like been your man forcing you. Like,
yeah.
Did you ask? Did you ask? Did you? I did. I asked them, could we have 5 pints and still drive? And what did they say? What did they say? They said no. All right. Are you sure you asked? No, I'll check. I'm going to call them up and see if you asked.
I asked them for the summer to be longer. Okay, is that what you want? The big thing now is that
how about money was worth more?
Yeah. Well, anyway, listen, they're their own animal. But in September, this is all within the first couple of weeks still, Mary Robinson resigns as president to start her new job as the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, therefore turning her back and spitting on the country. So it's time for a presidential campaign. Now, it's taken for granted that Fianna Fáil will get the presidency. That last time with Robinson, that was just a blip, right? That was Lenihan going on TV with his jerry curls and just being weird, right? That won't happen again. On mature recollection,
That's so good.
We'll stick up that clip on the Instagram, but he's such a... Yeah, I do. Listen, it's assumed they're back on track now. Presidential election. It's going to be Fianna Fáil candidate, and it's going to be Albert Reynolds, former Taoiseach. It's sort of a, golden parachute, a phrase from these times. It's like well done for losing the election. So this is where accounts differ, I guess. Bertie maintains this never happened, but Albert Reynolds says that Bertie met with him several times that summer and told him he'd be a great man for the presidency and he should run for it. Bertie says he never said such a thing. Reynolds said he insisted that he did it. So the High faction are still mad at Reynolds over the whole early 90s thing we talked about.
So Bertie denied ever saying that Reynolds would be a good president?
Telling him to do it.
Oh, telling him to do it.
Yeah,
right.
and Reynolds said that they met for lunch several times and he was like, do you know who'd make a great president now?
But that could be true. You could say that, but not tell him to run.
Yeah.
I was thinking about being a president. He was like, you might make a good one. You
Yeah.
could be like, it would be a terrible idea to run because I'm going to screw you over.
Well, so he's whatever is happening. Reynolds puts his hat in the ring, and it would have been in old times assumed that he would get it. But the High faction don't like Reynolds because he pushed High. The young Fianna Fáil crew don't like Reynolds because he's old.
There was a big Cullen when he went into...
Yeah, so all the High side, they lost their ministerial positions when Albert Reynolds took over. They don't like that. And the new young bucks of Fianna Fáil he's old-fashioned. They want hip young Bertie Ahern in anorak jacket wearing, bass drinking Bertie Ahern. Albert Reynolds is old-fashioned.
It's not an anorak, it's a car jacket.
It's a car jacket. So during the lead up to this, the name of Mary McAleese comes out. She's a lecturer in Queen's Belfast. People like Mary Robinson, maybe we should have another woman called Mary in the house. So her name starts to float around. So this is Fianna Fáil.
If you just referred to as Mary, they might not even know it's change.
They might it's just seamless.
It's the first woman to be elected 4 times.
Yeah. So this is to pick who the Fianna Fáil candidate is going to be. This is an internal vote. So there's a lot of focus in Northern Ireland at the time, like peace in Northern Ireland. She was from the north, seems like a good fit. So she gets put forward to the Fianna Fáil nomination as well. In the lead up to the vote, Reynolds and his team keep reading negative stuff in the press, talking about how he won't be a good candidate, and it keeps being quoted as a source close to the Taoiseach. And they start to wonder, who is this source close to the Taoiseach? So they finally ask Bertie, and he says, don't mind the press. I'm in your camp. They're just, let them talk away. I'm a Reynolds man. Meanwhile, in the background, everyone in the party is telling everyone else to vote for Mary McAleese. But publicly, Bertie is, you can put Mary McAleese forward if you want, but I'm voting Reynolds all the way. So on the day of the vote for the Fianna Fáil choice for president, they all get together to have a ballot, and Bertie apparently shows Albert his slip where he's written Albert Reynolds on it. And apparently Reynolds' friend Brian Crowley turned to Albert and says, you're fucked now.
Oh yeah, no, that's the that's stabbing you in the front of just saying, I know what you're doing.
So it is the quintessential Bertie story to just be like, yeah, there you go. A-L-B or T, Reynolds. Put it in the box. And he's like, well, the fact that he's done that means you're fucked, pal. And Mary McAleese wins the nomination and goes on to become the president of Ireland. Reynolds gets brought out the back and shot.
But the cheek to do it, you didn't have to show him. You didn't have to.
It's just
he knows
the most devious, the most cunning of them all. But that's such a... If Reynolds' account is to be believed, Bertie pushes him into running just to humiliate him. Like within a couple of weeks to like go behind his back and push for all the ministers to vote for Mary McAleese, and then publicly or like to his face show and pretend that he's voting for him and do him a favour just to fuck him.
And he just jocks him.
Yeah. It just seems unnecessarily cruel. But that's our man.
Unnecessary? Or is he laying down a marker?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know.
Don't mess with the man. Also, don't believe a word he says.
Yeah.
And if he likes you, that's when you should be really worried.
By the end of this term, we'll see that he not only... Because in the first episode, we're talking about like he gets betrayed by Labour. He feels slighted. He's angry and bitter. He gets back into power. He not only gets back into power, he like destroys his enemies. By the end of this term, like Fine Gael are almost gone. Labour gone. Like everyone who stood against him is stepped down.
That's the last episode of like season 2 or 3 of a House of Cards type show.
Or a Game of Thrones. Yeah,
he was up, he was on the way back down,
Yeah.
and now he's fucking going to level the place.
Oh, yeah. Well, so during all this time, this like September, October time, Charlie McCreevy is writing up the first budget for the new government. And again, Rory Quinn in the last government, he'd returned a surplus in the budget. He's only found out this afterwards. He's the Super Quinn, Fergal Quinn.
Oh.
He's his cousin. So there you go. But anyway, they have money for the first time.
That's really one-upping your brother, isn't it? What did you call your son? Fergal. What did you call yours? Super.
Which one's the favourite? So they return a surplus in the budget. Everyone's very excited. And then Fianna Fáil says, we'll take it from here. Kick them out. So now it's up to McCreevy to spend this money. So big tax cuts for everybody. Between McCreevy, Harney and like the PDs, they set up the framework for the Celtic Tiger as it happened. They are all about cutting taxes, cutting public spending. In his first budget in 1997, McCreevy says he's going to cut capital gains tax by 50%. And the department, they're like, geez, you can by 50%? That'll ruin the country. You can't do that. And he's like, well, I'm the Minister for Finance, so I will do that. And they're like, well, right, okay, maybe we'll do 10% this year, see how it goes. And we'll get the 5% over the next couple of years. But don't promise anything next year. We'll just see how this goes. And he's like, no, not 50 over the next 5 years, 50 now. And not from, I think it's customary that they do the budget and then announce it and stuff slowly brought in. It's like, the day of the budget, it's happening. 50% capital gains tax out the door. And he does it. And capital gains tax at the time was 40%. It goes down to 20. I think it's back up to about 33 now. Mm-hmm. But his whole time over the next couple of years is just get rid of as many taxes as possible. He lowers all the tax bands. He cuts public spending. And
what was the idea?
The idea was, it's the same thing we always talk about it. Like something gets done in America and then 10 years later it's in England and now it's here. It's Reaganomics, Thatcher economics of the 80s of cut public spending, cut taxes, trickle down economics, give the money to the people, it'll sort itself out. We decided to do that in the late 90s. Haven't seen what happened in the other two countries. And it does work. Everyone gets very rich very quickly, but it's also very bad about 6 years later on. I don't understand enough about economics to stand by what I'm saying here, but he basically...
I'm just fighting the urge to ask you what capital gains tax is.
Sure. Yeah, but it's what you were talking when the houses are sold, assets are sold, there's tax on that. How the government operates and how we all live in a society is that the government collects money from people and then spends that on stuff like welfare and social houses and roads and stuff like that.
Instead, don't collect any money.
Get rid of all that.
Don't spend...
Why would you just let private
get
people...
rid of the people.
Get rid of the... Sure, why would the government be in charge of hospitals? Sure, we'll let businessmen do it. Businessmen are better at running hospitals, and then when the economy turns down, we just won't have healthcare. That'll sort itself out. Don't be talking about the economy turning down. It's never going to happen. So this is that's what he wants. And it's what he gets. So we'll talk about him more at the end. But
fuck it, you know what? At least he's trying something.
He is.
He's doing something.
That's it, because...
Did you ever see that clip of there's like 10 seconds of Roy Keane talking about, he's kind of angry. He's like, look, you just, at least, if that was me, I would have just went and just tackled him. I would have just fell into him, just to hit someone.
Yeah.
Just because you're angry.
But
he's just going in and he's shaking stuff up. You're like, at least he's trying. At least it's not fucking boring.
But genuinely, because Lisa was saying yesterday, I mentioned the name of Creevy, and she was like, oh, he was another cowboy. And I don't think he's the same as Bertie in that, like, I don't agree with McCreevy's policies. Even as I'm saying that, it's like he was a very successful Minister for Finance, and I am some guy, but I don't agree with his economic policies.
I don't know anything about it. It just sounds weird.
It's a lot of it is like privatized cutbacks, take away the social safety net in favor of letting businesses do business, which whatever. But he has a vision, and he wants to see it done, and he has like a set of, not even morals, but he kind of has a set of goals he wants to achieve. In comparison to Bertie, who just wants to be in power. It's a different kind of, like, Bertie is just... I
don't know enough about him, but like it's hard to say that you hear that with some people, that they just want to be in power.
Yeah.
We've said it before about like Micheál Martin and stuff. Like, they must obviously get into politics not just for the power, that there must be something where they're like, maybe Bertie just wanted jobs, or he wanted...
There's a lot of...
We'll talk about also this. Just maybe not.
And we'll talk about this in the roundup, because I've read a lot of articles, and it's hard to know because, you know, the economy doesn't turn out too well, and a lot of people have bad things to say about him. But a lot of people at the end, like, close to him, are like, we don't really understand... We never understood what drove him. Because he doesn't... Because you can see McCreevy is like, this is what I want. I want to be in power, cut taxes. That's my vision for the economy. I think this will make society better. And he works towards that and achieves it and focuses on that. Bertie, you're like, why did he want it? He spent all this time, and like, you know, he destroys his enemies and like salts the land. But for what? Like, just to be in charge. Listen, we'll say about that for the conclusion bit at the end. Basically, McCreevy probably deserves his own episode. I probably deserve someone who knows about economics to talk about it. But he and the PDs really set the Celtic Tiger into motion. But that's a lot of scandals in the first couple of months. What about the good times? What about the good things?
Let them roll on.
April 1998. It's time for the Good Friday Agreement.
Hey!
Almost immediately when he gets into power, in July, the IRA have their second ceasefire. So that's good. And now, 6 months later, so that sets back in motion the peace talks. And within the next couple of months, everyone's getting around the table in April to finally sign the Good Friday Agreement. So this is by a big margin when you're looking at all the stuff about Bertie. This is the thing that he is kind of held on to as the most positive thing that he's done. And it's certainly the biggest positive accolade that you'll see written about him, or that he would talk about himself. The Good Friday Agreement essentially marked the end of the Troubles, apart from the Omen bombing and several other things that happened shortly afterwards. But for the most part, it sets up a power-sharing government in Northern Ireland that's endorsed by all the parties in the north, apart from the Democratic Unionists, as well as the British and the Irish governments. Mostly backed by the people of Northern Ireland and the people of Ireland. And signed on the 10th of April 1998. I will admit that I had to look up what day it was signed, and then remembered it's the Good Friday Agreement, because I was trying to find a reference for this because of that Monday, the Monday before, Bertie's mother died.
Yeah.
So the mother died, so he goes back to Dublin for the funeral, and he's back in Belfast the next morning at 7 a.m. to bring it home. And a lot of people will say that he overestimates his contribution to it, or that he didn't have as much to do with it, that Reynolds did it all and he just kind of came in at the last minute and brought it over the line. I don't know enough about it to say otherwise, but I feel like he did do a lot of good work for it.
What's the story? Didn't he tell Tony Blair or is that when he went over to 10 Downing Street, something about Cromwell, that he had a picture of him up?
Oh yeah,
yeah, and he was like, I won't negotiate if that photo's here. Which is like, if whether it's true or bollocks, right?
Yeah.
Even better if it's bollocks, just go around telling that story. Like, I went in straight away. Do you know what I did? There was a painting of... Why would there be a painting of Oliver Cromwell?
They like Cromwell.
I know, but I don't... The way it works that he beats him at it, like, right in front of the...
Yeah, it's still over the fireplace.
And what was the photo of? Well, it was murdering an Irish innocent child.
Yeah.
And he had a speech bubble coming out of it saying, "Yum, yum, delicious. I love murdering Irish children."
He said, "Up the UVF." That's a bit distasteful now. But so a lot of this is going back to our old friend Osama bin Laden, or maybe it was Saddam Hussein.
Could be any name you want on the passport.
I remember seeing
for 100 million. You can be the Dalai Lama for all I care.
You can be against Bertie. You can say he did bad things for the economy. He was obviously charismatic, and he was good at like bringing people together.
Oh yeah,
that's so. There's just this idea of like, but Bin Laden was probably charming. People are capable of doing good things and very bad things.
Usually, it's to be like you have to be charming to get to the point of
exactly
power where you could do
and
things.
There's this kind of like. I've just in researching this, I've just seen a lot of people being like, "Andrew, fuck it, he did nothing. He gave Swandon at the very end and brought over the line." It seems from everything
he also brought it over the line.
Yeah,
like, that's the
and all the stuff we read or did in the first episode of like he brings together the both sides of Fianna Fáil. He's constantly in a position of like as chief whip. His whole thing is that he's good at talking to people and bringing them together. And I feel like obviously there's people like John Hume and other people who contributed a lot to the Good Friday Agreement, but he probably did do something. I think it's disingenuous to be like, just because of the stuff that comes afterwards, and you can think that he's a bad guy for what he did to the economy, but it is disingenuous to say that he did nothing for the Good Friday Agreement. And this is a plug for Bertie's own podcast. He really is, he is milking it, but at the same time, if I did the Good Friday Agreement, I'd probably be talking about it still. Yeah. And also, he can't really talk too positively about all the other stuff that happened, but he has his own podcast called, as I remember it, Bertie Ahern and the Good Friday Agreement, which was recently beaten out in the history section for best podcast by the Troubles podcast by Oisin Feeney. So whatever, this is, you can listen to that, you can go read about the Good Friday Agreement if you want to learn more about that. But I do think that's a kind of admirable thing to take the time to go back to his mother's funeral and then back in the next day and bring it over. Now, I don't think this was known at the time because it came up much later, but like his mum staunchly against the bridge. That might have been what killed her. So we talked about that.
He's talking to who?
Yeah. We think we talked about in the first episodes about her family, or the home of being ransacked by the K Company, the auxiliaries, way back in the 20s. But she was very anti-British. But that was probably part of what his dad was an IRA man, as he came from this sort of Republican background, and that probably gave him a bit of credence to be able to talk to all these sides. But whatever happened, the Good Friday Agreement is signed in April with him there, and he gets to hang out with Blair and all the boys, and also McSavage's dad. He's the Minister for Foreign Affairs, so that's big. He's there as well. He's a big part of it. That could have been Ray Burke, if only. But in November 1998, Bertie officially gets divorced. Divorce is legal.
November 1998.
Yeah.
Is that the same time of the meteor shower in Loughlin Bridge, Carlo?
No, that's November 1999. You're off by a year.
Okay.
While I was researching, I just did a last minute look to see big events of each year on Wikipedia. And in 1999, there's a list of all the top events. Probably like 20 of the big events that happened in the year. And one of them is in November 1998. A bright fireball passed over Loughlin Bridge, County Carlow. And reports are people downed tools and started worshipping it as their new god. But to be, it's up there with like
Firestone. Oh Lord, Firestone. It's great because it's not even all of Carlow. It's
specifically your village.
village.
It's on in like May 20 to 25 max of the top things that happened in the country in the year in terms of foreign policy, economic, the invention of the punt.
Have you seen the light?
Yeah, it's like some 4 farmers in
quick,
Carlow.
it was here, it was gone. There's
your dad saw a flashing light in the sky and it made the news. Or half the village got pregnant afterwards and they're like, oh, it was the fireball. We have to drown these children in the river.
Yes, I thought in 90 to see people on the top of car bonnets all through the streets.
Yeah. The great fireball will return. But no, that's a year away. This time, a man's going through a divorce.
We don't even have like a monument to it.
Oh, you can't build idols of your gods.
Well, we do, because we call them the welly boots on that turn into the village. But it's to signify that's the. I've shown you.
Yeah.
They're the high king and queen, the chairs of because I don't know if anyone knows this. Carlow in the 14th century was the capital of Ireland, and Loughlin Bridge would have had in the Dinnery Forest. Maybe I'm just saying, I could be the descendant of a king. The
fireball denotes the chosen one has returned to the country. That's a real season 1 throwback to Carlo being the capital of the country. But this is a man's going through a hard time. All right, he's gone through a divorce.
You said, quote, "This will be a light, fun episode. This will have none of the bad stuff. We'll just have fun."
Yeah. Well, here's some lighter stuff. May 1999. Mario Rosenstock brings his hit show Gift Grub to Today FM, political satire show, which it's hard to overstate to foreign listeners. It's huge.
I thought you were going to say hard to listen to.
I remember this show so fondly as a kid. Like, I didn't understand anything. Is it daily? It's certainly weekly. There's a lot of it, but it's an early morning radio show satire of current affairs, politics, where Mario Rosenstock and a couple of others do impersonations of famous figures, and by God, you wouldn't recognize most of them. Bertie Ahern is the main...
Who could that be now? Who's in the news at the minute?
Yeah.
Well, they don't have to be in the news at the minute.
No, it's also... We were joking about it yesterday that a lot of Irish impressionists would be like, still in that era of like the late 90s, they'd be like, oh, I wonder what Roy Keane would have to say about this. And it's just... everyone has a good Brian Dobson impression that is somehow relevant in 2024, or like a lot of it does go back to him, and he's set the tone for impressions. It's specifically Bertie. Everyone, while I've been researching this over the last couple of weeks, anytime I said it to someone, we were doing a Bertie episode, people would do a Bertie impression, and it's invariably the saying spanner. In fact, the saying Jesus. None of which the real Bertie really said. And it all comes from Mario Rosenstock's impression of him.
He probably has. No, he's definitely said all of those things.
He's quoted as saying, the real Bertie confessed to saying Jesus once or twice, but said, "I shouldn't take the Lord's name in vain." Now that's the real man.
That's a Bertie quote.
That's a Bertie quote there. But so Bertie Ahern is the main character of this political side. So the name Gift Grub, I couldn't find... They obviously didn't record it because...
I did take the Lord's name in vain, but I wouldn't say took it. It was more of a donation.
Yeah, I've actually never met the Lord.
I've never taken anything from the Lord.
What about this picture of you and the Lord? I thought it'd been Miriam Lord. Jesus, yes. No, we've met. It was a dig out. But the name Gift Grub comes from the first episode of the show. Is Bertie Ahern showing off his favourite foods, aka grubs, and which ones are good, aka gift. Now, that's apparently, I can't find the first one. I can find loads of articles celebrating the 20th anniversary of the first episode, but they obviously didn't record it because it's not anywhere. It's a celebrate here is nothing to do with the first episodes, which we've obviously deleted from a server somewhere.
Started taping over it.
Yeah, because they didn't think it was, well, presumably they didn't think it was going to last. But
also, it's probably not fair to a long-running show like that. It's not going to be good anymore.
It
probably was at some point.
If you're doing...
I don't want to be negative to Irish media for no reason. I haven't listened at all. From
I played you a little bit of instead of because I got high, they sold it to Sky, and you were like, you know what, I take it back.
Yeah, I did actually.
He's great.
Yeah, that's true.
Now I sent you Oliver Callan's Bertie impression. I'm a Callan man myself. They worked together in the early days, and I think there's some rift that I couldn't really figure out. But he went off and formed Knob Nation. I think he's probably better at impressions. He did a pretty good Bertie. But I'll put in a clip of...
Okay. Trying to get the butter this morning. Nearly had a bleeding heart attack.
Well, I told you before, butter is bad for your cholesterol, Taoiseach.
It's not that, Joe. One of them was in the bleeding fridge.
What?
Behind the yogurts. Fuck that.
The known?
Petit filou.
Right. I'll have a word, okay? I mean, I'll do the best that
Thanks,
I can.
Padder.
There you go, Bertie.
At least with this, I have a bit of peace.
Everybody down! Everybody down! Everybody down!
Neutralise suspect object.
Jesus! In fact, me boss!
Object neutralised.
Oh, Jesus. He's just neutralised me boss, Joe. In fact, that's the last straw with these security guys.
Well, no.
But there's...
Hey,
we listened to the Liam Lawler Lotto one.
It's out
it is
a
consistent.
lot.
It's out a lot. But that is he defined for his media savvy and PR savvy as Bertie Ahern was, and how much he was on TV, and how long he was in politics, and how much people would have seen him and heard him talk. People's impression of him is the fake one that Mario Rosenstock made up,
which is pretty good.
That's
pretty funny, though.
Yeah, fair play to him. Yeah.
Because people probably have got up to Bertie and done, sorry, the last time they've ever done anything, but got up to him and done his impersonation.
Yeah. Well, Bertie had laughed and be like, oh, that's good. In fact, I hadn't heard that one before. And then the next day you go home and your house is burnt down. And it turns out you owe Bertie Ahern money for it. But no, like in fairness, Gift Grub, long running show. Gift Grub, so they release like a special every year. Gift Grub number 6, the 36th best-selling album of all time in Ireland. So it's a huge show.
Number 1,
David Gray's White Ladder. He was in Whelan's the other day.
I know, I was raging. If I had known, I would have loved to have seen. He's so good.
He's so 4 days back to back. I can't figure out if this is me just getting old or. Because I saw that in Whelan's. It's like, what? David Gray? Whelan's? He should be playing the Tree Olympia. He should be Crow Park.
Well,
White Ladder is a success.
Well, it is
wall-to-wall banger.
It's the most successful album. It'll never be topped.
No,
because people
stop buying CDs right afterwards.
So it'll forever be the most successful album of all time in Ireland. And the fact that he plays Whelan's.
I assume it must be a choice because he sold out all 4 of them immediately.
So it's like 2,000. You could do like 2 shows in the Olympia.
I thought he was doing, because I saw that and I thought he was doing like a late show and they added an early show for extra punters. I think he must like the smaller venue.
Yeah. I'd move, I was going to say heaven and earth, I'd move pints with you.
I'd move them to Whelan's to listen to David Gray. Anyway, that's a useless bit of trivia that it is the number 1. Like better selling than Core's, Cranberries, U2, White Ladder, David Gray. If you want it.
I think Bob Dylan actually. So
that was it, but this is like us doing a Bertie impression. David Gray. What an who's this Roy Keane coming in to sing?
If you want.
I don't know. Babylon. I'd say you Babylon, Roy. What? That's good writing. Actually, I'm leaving the show. Me and Oliver Callan are going to start our own. But in November 1998, a fireball passed over Coughlan, causing many people to give up their belief in religion. But so this is the next clip for you. In the year 2000, it's the millennium. Everyone's very excited. This is a little clip from. So in March of 2000. Bertie Ahern rejects the ESRI economic advice.
The Taoiseach has flatly rejected advice from the Economic and Social Research Institute to adopt policies to slow down the economy rather than embark on a campaign to attract skilled immigrants. The advice is contained in the latest quarterly commentary from the ESRI. The Institute is also calling for the tax cuts promised in the new national agreement to be postponed and for mortgage interest relief to be abolished. The Minister for Finance says he's not particularly worried about the comments by the ESRI.
The government's economic strategy involves big tax cuts, measures to support homeowners and a campaign to attract 200,000 immigrants from abroad. But the ESRI, which is a state-funded economic think tank, says this strategy is all wrong and could end in tears. It wants the government to change tack. It believes that budgetary changes to deliberately slow down the economy now would be far preferable than the planned campaign to attract immigrants from abroad. And it's calling on the government to abolish mortgage interest relief and to introduce other measures to take money out of the housing market. Speaking at an EU summit in Lisbon today, the Taoiseach flatly rejected the ESRI advice.
I'm not going to charge out to lead the policy as soon as we've got the first few years ever of bringing people back since the famine to try to put my hand in the dike to stop it. A lot of Irish people out there who I think we owe it to give an opportunity.
So this is a classic of this era. The government has set up a sort of semi-independent financial regulation kind of body called the ESRI to give them economic advice. And the ESRI gives them economic advice and they say, shut the fuck up. It's the good times. We got to let them roll. Put it all on black. They say things like, maybe we should, try and cool the economy down a little bit so this doesn't explode in, say, exactly 8 years. And Charlie McCreevy says, how about we do the exact opposite of what you just told us? Mm-hmm. So
8 years, that's 2 elections away.
What are you, fucking nuts? So yeah, I mean, but there's the other hand. What's the famous phrase of like economists have predicted 10 of the last 2 recessions? It's like they're gonna overestimate the negatives of this sort of stuff. Now they're right, but Bertie's right as well. It's the first time people are coming to the country since the famine. And what is he going to stop the party? This is something we'll talk about at the end, and you can spend all day hypothesizing. Bertie probably wasn't the right man for that time in Ireland. You needed someone to put a bit of manners on the place, I think. He is a very populist. He likes the good times. He likes being in charge. He's not the kind of man to be like, we won't get a second one. I know you want it now, but trust me, it'll be better off in the morning. Leave it at that.
But times are good, so we're not going to tax anyone.
Yeah.
Which is like, if times are good, there's a load of money around. We could tax people and have better social services.
And save money for...
And then people would also still have money because the times are good, so everything could get better.
Yeah. Now, McCreevy, I think I have this written for the next episode, but there's a famous line from McCreevy where his economic policy is, if we have money, we spend it. If we don't, we don't. And there's no room in there for, save it for a rainy day. While the times are good is the time to save money. So when the times are bad, we don't have to lose the country, which is a little bit of foreshadowing. But anyway, this is what happens. And Bertie is probably not the man to put the brakes on anything. He likes being popular. And this is all easy with hindsight to look back and be like, make jokes about what's going to happen. But at the time, they're like, he's right. It is the first time ever that times are good. And after long decades of hardship, would you be the person to be like, right, I know it seems like things are good now, but this is actually the worst thing that could happen. Let's all tighten our belts and all that old bullshit that would have been around for years.
Yeah, I think I would have been, because we talked about this the other day, that because we grew up in a time during the recession.
Yeah.
That my entire life has been thinking like that.
I know, but it's because of the recession.
Because of the recession, so it's impossible to put myself in the mindset of like not thinking like that.
That's true, yeah.
I went to school when I was like, so I was like 15.
Yeah.
And the recession hit, and it was like the world's fucked it out forever.
Yeah.
It was like, do you want to get a job, like waiting tables? Yeah, well, no one has any money to go to a restaurant.
So it's hard to think of, put your mind back, before that, when all of a sudden people have money for the first time. It would be difficult to be like...
I think you say that, and I think you...
But that's why you're meant to be in charge. You're supposed to be the adult of the room.
But also I think that there's a lot of people in the country who did make money during the Celtic Tiger and saved it and weren't idiots with it and were perfectly fine afterwards.
And they now own all
the
Anyone who had like $1 million left after the recession bought
everything, But then when everyone just goes, well, sure, what were we meant to do? Use like financial prudence, just like our own cop on? Yeah. It's not enough of an excuse to be like, well, we had loads of money, so therefore just...
But like
common sense went out the window.
But what common sense? Like, we don't know anything about economics, and if you're like, right, how will I find out about economics? How about I listen to the Minister for Finance, the guy who's in charge?
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
He was
again.
Before he did that, he was an Irish teacher.
Sure, he's just some guy.
Yeah.
And if he's saying like the good times, if we have it, spend it. If we don't. That's his economic advice. Who am I to say? Who was the last Minister for Finance? Oh, Bertie Ahern. He's running the country. He didn't even have a bank account. Why should I be saving money when none of these guys are? You'd want to be...
No, don't say it. You'd want a normal person. Plenty of people went out there, made loads of money, built a house, saved up some money, had enough money put away for their kids as they were growing up, and then continued to work. And even when the times got bad, they were still okay enough.
Yeah.
That lots of people did that, and it's just that we all just love a blasé attitude, turn it around and be like, do you see all these fucking gobshites who they're like, well, I overextended myself. What I had was I had 15 houses and I had a mortgage on every single one of them, and I had €5 on my bank account, and I was thinking, do you know what we could do with that €5? Leverage it.
But every one of those people you describe, all the sensible people who like bought the house and put a little bit of money away, I almost guarantee that all of them was also like, I could get an apartment in Bulgaria. Yeah, the snow season's very good. Yeah, like everyone did a little bit of something.
Everyone
stupid.
was going to do a little bit of something stupid, but a little bit made sense.
Yeah,
It's like if the money was just like swashing around, you're like, how much? It's 10 grand for an apartment.
Yeah, and like, can you imagine everyone else getting rich around you? And you're like, I'll just put it away for a rainy day in my hippo saving box.
Yeah.
But anyway, listen, that's
No, but it's because it's not just that. It's not like that. The options were you could either put it in a bank and do nothing with it, or you could spend it on a Lamborghini. There's like you could make investments into businesses that did work, or into like stocks and financing, into gold or anything.
Apartments in Bulgaria.
Yeah, but it's just
there's a little turnkey opening up in a town you've never heard of in the south of Spain. I think we should buy 4.
Yeah. Well, I'm just
5 for safety.
Overall, I'm just tired of hearing like the rich old lads from around the country who just bought 20 houses for no reason. They were like, what was your background in? Well, I was a chef. Like, why are you...
It's called diversifying your portfolio. I have a house in every county. That's what a diverse portfolio is. But
It's actually just because we had no imagination. That's the problem. That everyone's like, let's just do houses.
The biggest, what Irish people think
it's as safe as...
Yeah, exactly. It's as safe as houses, which is a phrase that hasn't made sense since 2007.
Since what's not.
Yeah. But sure. But also look at the lotto ads. The lotto ads is like, extreme wealth. And all of them are just like, what if you had a house with slides? But it's all like, that's all we can imagine. It's just like, what if we owned a house? What if you were so rich you could afford land?
A bigger house.
Yeah, it's all just variations of houses. But anyway, you know what's like a house for animals? The Dublin Zoo, which Bertie was a big fan of. Oh. This was sent in to us at the last minute by a fan of the show, Ethan. This is just kind of like a nice little... He loved the zoo. In 1994, as Minister of Finance, he pumped a load of money into it to do the zoo up. And in 2000, they basically doubled or tripled the size of it he gave them more of Phoenix Park. Made a giant African enclosure. And he says he spent a lot of his childhood in the zoo and he really likes it. And during a press conference while they're introducing the new zoo, he hopped over the fence and just started walking through the African exhibit. And he's, again, this comes up in the next episode, I think, but there's he famously says he's a socialist, and everyone's like, in what world what are you talking about? And to do with the zoo, his definition of socialism is that he kind of thinks of state property as his own property, and he talks about he's jumping over the fence in the zoo. He's like, sure, we own the zoo. The zoo's for everybody. And he talks about sneaking into the botanical
into the lion enclosure.
Yeah, he talks about sneaking into the botanical gardens as well. He's like, sure, I'm a socialist. We own this. It's for everybody.
The doll bar, no, that's
that's just for the people. No, well, to be honest, he would probably be the sort of person to invite anyone in. He's not paying for the pints, so you can drink whatever you want. But it's just kind of a sweet moment in other sort of damning episode of him. He liked the zoo. He liked animals.
I think you think that it's a good thing, but it's like, imagine there's a lot of people listening and be like, you know what he did? He tripled the amount of captive animals we have.
I don't.
He spent a load of money holding animals hostage.
Yeah, but he made them nice.
And mistreating them.
Yeah, I don't like the zoos. I think during COVID there was a big rally money to save the zoos. We shouldn't be saving any zoos at this time. But I mean, maybe in the early 2000s he should have been putting more money into something else rather than the zoo. But I think it's sweet that he likes
the zoo.
Yeah. In 2001, The Little Book of Bertie was released, covering all of Bertie's malapropisms. Bertie Speak has its own Wikipedia page. And this book was written by Will Hannafin.
He calls it Dublinese.
Does he?
Bertie does, yeah.
It's just
and
a
he
list.
says if you don't understand it, you're not educated. I remember he said that in a quote. He was like, people just come at me because I talk with a bit of Dublinese and they're not educated in that.
He just sort of says stuff.
Which is just...
Yeah. People should try not to upset the apple tart, we said earlier. The neutrality is not and never has been anything but absolutely clear. I think Bertie Speak is defined by he can say a lot of things and you're like, yes. You think you understand what he said, and then a minute later you're like, he didn't really say anything.
Yeah, he just walks away.
He just walks away. My favourite one was, it took Ireland 30 years to become an overnight success. Which is great.
Yeah.
But
that's ripped off. Someone says that it's about comedians, Kevin. That's something you know about.
That's true.
Your buddy Jason's one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. So he's just ripped that off and just put Ireland in and elongated the time frame.
Maybe.
He's a smart man.
I'm trying to find, this is from, he's talking about George Bush. He's like, I wanted to be sure. And he assured me. It's just great listening to him speak. He has a way with words. And successful enough in 2001 that they're releasing books about the way he speaks. In the same year, we talked about this in the last episode, he loves Dublin GAA and Man United. And in September 2001, he appeared on The Premiership alongside John Giles and Eamon Dunphy.
Yeah.
And imagine if Roy Keane was in that room. What would that have sounded like? It's also important to have a John Giles impression in 2024. But they chat about United's 4-1 win against Everton, Arsenal's 1-1 draw with Chelsea, and Liverpool's 3-1 loss to Aston Villa. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
and most importantly, not about any tribunals.
Absolutely.
We're leaving all of that.
Yeah. These are all the tribunals are all trucking away in the background at this time. In the next episode, that's when they all start to ramp up. And
this is the media tour he goes on now, where it's like he does the Premiership. He does Hanging with Hector.
He does hang on Hector in 2004, which we'll cover in the next episode, but it is very strange.
That's that line I told you about that with when he's in the front of the car and Hector's in the back and they're just chatting to the driver, bringing them somewhere, and he's asking him about Tony Blair.
Yeah.
And he goes, and he turns around the car, he's had a shock in Iraq.
That's great. He's had a shock in Iraq.
They just talk about giant global issues like it is the local football.
Which he's good at talking about football. But yeah, this is in the lead up to the 2002 election. He does a little bit of
a thing that happens every year.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's better or worse. He's had a bad Iraq.
Yeah. He really fumbled.
He really fumbled the Baghdad.
There you go. Political satire from 2001. So does he go on Bosco as well at this point? I thought that's what you were going to say.
Oh.
Does he talk to Bosco?
I don't know if Bosco was around 2004. Bosco's definitely gone by then.
That might actually be a gift grub episode I'm thinking of. It's the only thing that comes up is Bertie meets Bosco at gift grub. But he's going on this sort of media tour in the lead up to the 2002 election. Also in 2001, and this is from an article in 2009, he gives the go-ahead to create a financial regulator separate from the central bank. So there's one, as far as I understand it...
Was his name Warren G?
You may as well have had Warren G in there. Because there's one regulator to overlook all the financial institutions, and they make it separate from the central bank. And in 2009, he says, if that was the one mistake I probably made. I'm not going to take the full blame for what happened, but in retrospect, he says, if I had a decision again today, I wouldn't have done it. Which, a year after the whatever economic board is telling you to slow the brakes in the economy, to remove and separate the regulator from the financial institution is probably one of the most careless things that they did at that time. Which is also the other side of McCreevy's thing, cutting taxes, cutting spending. The other part to that, cut regulations, because they see bureaucracy and red tape as standing in the way of business and getting business done. But at no stage, and again, this is also having lived through the recession, but at no stage should you be removing regulators from financial institutions. And then listen, because this is where the whole issue comes from, because he says they check in with a financial regulator and they're like, yeah, it's grand. And after the economy's like, when I said it was grand, what I meant was I don't know what's happening. And men like Sean,
out of the building.
They won't tell me what's happening. I haven't been inside the buildings, and it turns out that Sean Quinn bought a load of shares in it. It's pretty wild stuff, and I have no oversight of what's happened there. And a lot of that could be traced back to this decision to set them up as a separate institution for whatever reason. But this last bit is just going to be about, there's all these stories. Yeah, Charlie McCreevy, finance minister. There's an election coming up in early May, which means it's time for an election-style budget. So McCreevy has spent 5 years decreasing public spending. And in the 6 months leading up to the election, they increased the public spending by 22%.
Mm-hmm.
So
a TD for everyone in the audience.
This is after
your local TD, you get one in your house.
Well, after 4.5 years of cutting all the money from all the state, and at the last 6 months, he just shoves money down everyone's throat.
That's what everyone always does.
And heading it, yeah, I know, but it is it's pretty egregious to be to increase it by 22%. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And just at the very end, right before the election.
So you can bank on it every time an election's coming up that you're like, we're going to get ready for some social spending.
You better fucking love money, pal. But so there's all these stories that McCreevy. So, this is his fifth budget or whatever. There's sort of, and this came from the Irish Times podcast, and they swear that it's verified. But the general story is that McCreevy would show up.
A journalist just put out, I swear, I promise. It's true. I swear to God. I swear to God.
No fingers crossed or nothing. It's some lad in the pub told me.
Well, actually, that is actually just exactly what journalism is.
Yeah.
Where you're like, I can't get, who told you this?
Yeah.
I've got sources, I can't divulge my sources.
But trust me, it happened. So the stories that they say is that McCreevy would show up to St. Luke's the Sunday before the budget with the whole thing written up and just show it to Bertie and be like, I'm going for a walk. You read that. And this is there's so little oversight from Bertie as to what McCreevy is doing. And then the stories expand as over the years he kind of gets used to this sort of thing. So like McCreevy would drop in the budget.
He just comes back and there's a tea stain on it.
That's the only copy, so don't lose it. But he'd have clerical workers in the house with him waiting for it. He'd drop in the report and be like, right, take as much of this down as possible. Try and figure out what it means. And then they'd hand it back. So like this is like if not the day before the budget, the week of the budget. And they're like, right, let's figure out what exactly it is that we're doing here. And he just seems to... There's very little oversight from him as to what the finance minister is doing. But again, times are good. Why would we question him? If times started being bad, maybe he'd start looking at what McCreevy is writing into this document. But the money's coming in. It's a good times.
Yeah, still
first time people are coming back since the famine.
Some oversight would be good.
He had a day to read it, but it's an hour to read it even.
But of like as an excuse.
He's got the time it takes for McCreevy to go get a bag of chips and a pint and come back.
But just to be afterwards, be like, look, I'm sorry. If I could make the decision again, I wouldn't have done it. But you're like, no, that's not. You can't say that. You can't be like, look, this reprehensible decision that you knew would end up going like. What country in the world is like, let's get rid of regulation? Well, it probably has been some of the others,
and we do it again. It's holding the economy back. But he was Minister for Finance.
But did he like? It's not enough to just be like, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't do that again.
Yeah,
that's not. He didn't. Actually, that move did kind of fuck the country.
It did,
and it didn't help in any way.
There's a whole pattern of this. So McCreevy brings in the Finance Act of 2002. So huge tax breaks for developers of private nursing homes and private hospitals. So they incentivize private hospitals and private nursing homes by bringing in all these tax cuts. All these things have knock-on effects for like the next couple of decades, but this is a sort of the idea of that a business would run hospitals better than we would. And there's issues with the hospitals, but why try and fix them? Why not just sell it to a business? Mm-hmm. So
let's run it like a business. Let's run the country.
Have you ever
like
heard of a failed business? I don't think so. So they give them all these tax breaks for private hospitals. Later on, McCreevy would admit that he did this after being lobbied by private hospital developers for years. So I don't know. This is indicative of the time of just like taking money out of public bodies, trusting private companies. Then years later, when the economy turns down and the private companies go, we've no bets.
I wouldn't, if I could make the decision now, I wouldn't have done it.
I'd certainly reconsider it. But no one's thinking about that at the time. They're all getting ready and excited for the 2002 general election.
And the World Cup.
And the World Cup. And also trying out our new electronic voting machines. In 2002, we trialled some electronic voting machines with the intent of rolling them out to the whole country. There was a confidential report written up at the time that the e-vote machines were easily hackable. But Bertie says...
He was like, let's use them anyway.
But he said he thinks Ireland will be a laughing stock for using stupid old pencils. Everyone will be laughing at us. So let's go with the e-vote machines. About a month later, a bunch of Dutch hackers proved they could easily manipulate them and break into it and change it. And then Bertie says it's a matter of national pride at this stage to get them working. So they sink a load of money into it. But by 2009, it's scrapped, along with most of the economy. And it eventually...
Is there a number? Is there a figure on how much they cost?
There is...
Because it's something that was really... People have been talking about this for years. And if I find out now that it was like 5 million, I couldn't give a shit.
It's about 55 million. But that's also
not great.
They spent all the money on the machines initially and then spent years, literal years, this is from 2002 to 2009, trying to get them to work, even though they were proved to be easily hackable. Then they were kept in storage for years, and that cost a lot of money. And it would be very interesting to see whose cousin owns that, Ray Burke Incorporated. But so they kept in storage for years, and then eventually they were sold for scrap, basically for 70 grand in 2010. 55 million.
Do you know what? It's not that bad.
It's not that much money.
Yeah, it's
in
not
good times
compared to what's that? That's one room in the children's hospital. Is that what that is?
Sure. But again, that's jumping ahead. No one's thinking of that sort of stuff at the time. Everyone loves Bertie. The 28th Dáil became the second longest running Dáil to complete a full term. On the 25th of April, they dissolved the Dáil, go for election on the 17th of May. And Fianna Fáil and the Progressive Democrats are re-elected. With Fianna Fáil, they're just 3 seats shy of a full majority. So we talked about that in the last episode a lot. The days of like a one-party government are gone. It's all coalitions for years. They get very close to being back and just them in power. Mm-hmm. But it's them and the Progressive Democrats. It's the first time a government had been re-elected since Jack Lynch in 1969. So last episode we're talking about the government collapsing the whole time. This is the complete opposite of that. This is the people saying, we like what you're doing, we want more of it. And as I alluded to earlier on, in this election, Fine Gael lose like 23 seats. Michael Noonan has to resign as leader of Fine Gael. Rory Quinn resigns as leader of the Labour Party. This is after Dick Spring had resigned back in the 90s over bad election results. So all the people that stood against him, all the people that betrayed him last time to make the Rainbow Coalition, are not only losing seats, but the figureheads are gone.
And now on to liars.
Yeah, it's like this is 2002, so the main players of like the 1997 election, all those party leaders are gone and changed. Dick Spring had been in charge for 15 years or something, one of the longest. So he's like, take him out back and shoot him. No one crosses Bertie.
Make him run for president.
Yeah, make him run for president just to jock him at the last minute and put in someone else. So this is it. It's King Bertie. He's riding high into the next election. The Celtic Tiger. So in 2002, the tech bubble that kind of popped. It's interesting reading from this time. There was also a housing crisis at the time. People the brakes hadn't been fully taken off of the huge property boom that's about to come. But everything's been set up for that. The finance regulator's been put in a different building. Tax cuts and everything. Huge incentives for developers to come into the country. Bribes all over the shop.
This is lighted up. This sounds like a great episode 3.
It's going to be a great episode 3. The second term and the Teflon Taoiseach.
Ooh.
He can't be stopped. So, any questions about their greatest Taoiseach ever?
So much, but not for now.
Well, what did we cover in this episode? A lot of it happens in the first 6 months. So you've got all the allegations with Burke, and there's kind of this hangover of the old Haughey era, and he pretty deftly gets rid of Reynolds, he gets rid of Burke, he gets rid of a lot of the old-fashioned Fianna Fáil people who are taking bribes and just stuff you shouldn't be at all, and successfully hides the fact that he's doing all this as well for a long time.
It's all of those, because it's a bigger deal. Obviously, if it was the Good Friday Agreement, and at the end, in terms of like the regulator and stuff like that, that's way bigger. It's more. It should be more interesting. It should be what we really care about. I care about is like, why is he living in a place that a man bought a house and then just let him live in it basically rent free, and then sold it to him after, but had it in his will that said if I die I just give the house for free to Bertie. That's like just. What's that about? And that's what everyone focuses on, stuff like that, because you're like, it's so small. It's like it's a house. It's not saying it's small, but you're
in comparison to an entire country.
Yeah, in comparison to if the entire housing crash is to happen, that it's just one house, but everyone's like that, and he does buy it eventually. It's like these, I'm going to say small amounts, but like 30 grand, 40 grand. Yeah. How many of these are coming through that haven't been found?
Yeah, there's a lot of allegations. Yeah, a lot of it is circling around. Like the Ben Dunn scandal is $1 million. It's a lot of money, and it is corrupt. But you're right. There's this period where it's just completely taken away all of the safety checks and balances that could have prevented what happens, which is a much bigger knock-on effect to the people of Ireland. Mass immigration, mass unemployment, compared to a man getting a couple of $100 grand in his bank account that he might have won on a horse. Who's to say?
That's saying he might have won.
He might have won it on a horse,
but he's mainly just sweating because you haven't found all the other ones. Some of that stuff probably is like a bets. Yeah. Just like, but it was, where did you get the initial 20 grand to put on the bet?
This is for maybe the last episode, but there's a very funny review of his book, because he released an autobiography right after the crash. It's like the irony of
if I did it.
If I did it. The irony of reading an autobiography of a man who seems to be able to recall with extreme clarity every event from his childhood, yet can't remember where 100 grand came from.
Where 100 grand came from.
What the name of the horse was.
Where he went to college.
Yeah, he can't remember where he went to college. Why am I reading the book about like the good old days in Dublin when he clearly can't remember anything? But anyway, that's for later on. So that's part 2.
Part 2.
Yeah. Thanks for signing up to the Patreon. We've noticed that bumping up in the last couple of weeks. Yeah. We'll have we've got the McCracken, the Moriarty, and the Flood Tribunal all coming out. That'll cover Ray Burke, Mike Lowry, and then...
Thank you for pronouncing it like that.
Yes, that's just for you. And Goodman. I think that's the other big one we're going to do. That'll all be behind the paywall. And maybe we'll do a follow-up episode in Bertie behind the paywall where I'll just say he was in the IRA. Why not? But cheers. Thanks for the support. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.
Or at a live show. Go buy tickets. Go buy tickets to the live show too.
Bloody tickets. Come see us in Belfast, I think is the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm going to organise Limerick and Galway now as well. I'll call that man back.
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
Good luck. Shafter.